Good evening. Thank you for joining us for Judges on the Follow Lawful My name is Joshua Gilliland, and I'm one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks, and it's a privilege to be at Comic-Con for our 5th appearance. Who here is a Star Wars fan? Is a Clone Wars fan? Who here still cries when they think about fives? We're going to talk about many great issues from one of the greatest Star Wars stories ever told. Our panel tonight includes Circuit Judge John Owens from the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Carol Najera. Tollafield from the University of California, Hastings College of Law. Bethany Bengfort, who is with the U.S. Courts in Washington, D.C. Stephen Chu, who is an assistant U.S. attorney here in San Diego. And myself, and I can say, we all are lifelong Star Wars fans. Now let's talk about civil rights, specifically the civil rights of clone troopers. And Judge Owens, help us understand what are the rights of these individuals.
Well, I'd like to be optimistic about the rights of clones, but it doesn't always end so well for them. As we know from watching Clone Wars, clone troopers are sentient beings. They have opinions, they have their own thoughts. They're not the bumblers from the Star Wars movies I watched in the 70s as a kid. They're actually unique and very intelligent. We see in the first episode of Clone Wars, episode Ambush, where Yoda is with the 3 clone troopers. He really has this great conversation about how you're all individual, you're like this, the Force is in all of us. So when you watch the series at the beginning, you think, hey, wow, these clone troopers may really have some really unique rights. It doesn't really work out that way. Especially by season 6. Season 6 is rough. So there's Clone Trooper 5. I mean, what a good guy, right? He loves his friend Tup. His friend Tup mysteriously kills the Jedi, and Tup tries to figure out what happens. They remove that chip from his head, which we all know is the horrible Order 66 chip. And then the Jedi and the Kaminoan Doctor debate what to do with them. And so right in front of them, there's this discussion. It's a great episode, Fugitive. 5, if we go to the next slide, he's basically begging for his life. And he says, I'm not a piece of hardware, I'm a living being. And the doctor, Nola Singh, says, you were created in our laboratories. You are Kaminoan property. So now you hope, okay, the Jedi, right? Jedi are the good guys. This Jedi is going to be like Yoda. He's going to reckon, you're right. You are a living being. What do you want to do? That is not what she says. Correction. Technically, he is property of the Republic. And that is a very disheartening exchange, because you really hope the Jedi would be what we think of the good guys. And as we know from watching Clone Wars, they're not always the best. So we go to the rights checklist. We have this concept in this country and in many countries of informed consent as the patient. The idea is that you cannot be treated by a doctor or given a treatment unless you consent to it and you know what's happening to you. There was no informed consent in this episode. The Jedi treated him and frankly, it was like talking to the Chancellor when they talked to the Jedi. No one in the episode really cares about 5s. And really the only one who cares about 5s is probably at the end of the next episode with Anakin, where they're trying to talk him down, trying to figure out what's going on with 5 before he's killed. And my analysis is, now again, this is clear about civil rights in the medical area, which is a big one. I don't think that clone troopers are any different than droids. So it was kind of depressing going back and watching episodes of this season. It was not a happy way to end for 5s.
But at the same time, this is a show written for 7-year-olds tackling these radically complex issues. And God bless them, the writers and creative team, for treating 7-year-olds with maturity and respect, so hopefully their parents can say, slavery's wrong. So I get a drink. So, Professor, can you help us understand secret marriages and whether Padme and Anakin have something healthy?
Emotionally, I can't really speak to, but from a legal aspect, the trick is to keep the marriage certificate non-public. Because as many of you know, if you're married, when you get married, you file the marriage certificate with the county clerk. And that is a public record. Any nosy neighbor can go and pull the record from the county clerk and see your date, your marriage, your names, your birth dates, names of your parents. So the trick is to figure out a way to keep that marriage certificate secret. And most couples, by the way, want the marriage certificate because that legal recognition of the government's approval of your marriage is what entitles you to the benefits of marriage, like inheritance upon death, custody of children, that sort of thing. But it's not likely that they can keep it secret. There's only 2 jurisdictions in the United States that allow for kind of secret marriages. The first one is right here in California. You can, under California Family Code Section 500, you can file for a confidential marriage. And a confidential marriage allows you to file a marriage certificate in kind of a non-public file at the county clerk's office that the public can't get to without a court order. The problem is that the law is really specific. The case law that interprets this says that you have to be cohabitating as spouses before you get the marriage certificate. And Anakin and Padme weren't, the whole point was that they didn't want anyone to know that they were spouses, so they were obviously not doing that, so they probably couldn't take advantage of the Section 500 confidential marriage. Anyone from Michigan here today? No one? No good listeners. The other place is Michigan. They have a statute 551.201 that allows for the issuance of a marriage license without publicity. And it's a little old-fashioned. It's for situations where the couple wants to avoid the stigma of a child being conceived before the couple is married. So the statute allows a probate judge to secretly marry the couple in the judge's chambers, and then the judge just puts the marriage certificate in her own files, and the county clerk never even sees it. No one knows about it. But again, this is just for situations where there are extraordinary circumstances. And again, and Padme weren't pregnant with their children at the time they were married, so they couldn't conceive it. So they probably couldn't keep their marriage certificate secret. But I mean, as you're thinking about this, if you were planning like a super secret forbidden marriage, would 50% of your guest list be secret? Secret doesn't keep secrets. That's not a thing. So we'll take it at face value, but I think their conduct is maybe a little contrary to their stated intent.
Well, let's talk about desertion. And Bethany, can you help us here understanding the deserter?
Sure. Desertion is illegal. Yeah. Desertion can really be one of 2 things. You either leave service or leave the Army with no intent of returning. That's desertion. There's also leaving your place of duty in order to avoid a hazardous assignment or task. And that's also considered desertion. This is generally punishable by a $1,000 fine, maybe some jail time, except in time of war when it was punishable by death. And one of the things here, so in this episode, LaQuaine, sees all of his, friends and brothers get slaughtered, and he realizes that the only thing left is for him to die. And so rather than just be slaughtered himself, he deserts and starts his own family, so he's exercising his individual choice to do so. And so generally, a soldier must follow all lawful orders, and this includes extremely dangerous orders. So there have been a number of cases where people have been said, my commander sent me on a suicide mission, like they shouldn't have done that, I wasn't going to kill myself, right? But, there's a line between suicide and extremely dangerous, and most of the time the laws come out and said that, oh, that was extremely dangerous, and therefore it was a lawful command you had to follow. Also, the other side of this is that the question is whether LaQuain's service itself was lawful, because you could argue that he never had a choice, really. He was never had the opportunity to enter into it, so it was more akin to slavery, which is not lawful. Or if you consider things like the military draft, which is forced conscription. From the Military Selective Service Act of 1967, conscription must be random. It must be done by random lottery, and these guys were not drawn randomly. They were bred for the purpose. So he could probably argue that. Don't know if he would win in the anti-lottery Senate, but.
It's going to be a tough call. It's going to be a tough call for the poor guy. Never works out well for the clone troopers. Let's say that.
Steve, let's talk about the Younglings and what happens with them being the Jedi Order.
So, quick show of hands, who here has ever dreamed of being a Jedi? So, as we learned in the Clone Wars, although that seems like a great idea, you become force sensitive, you build your lightsaber, you go on these grand adventures. However, you also have to leave your family at a very young age. You may never see them again. The Jedi are your family now. Is that legal? Well, certainly in the Star Wars universe, it has to be. It's happening all the time. But are there real-world similarities? And the answer is not really. We really don't have, as a society or a legal system, we don't have a process where we recognize children with abilities like that, that we know of, that have force abilities. But what we do have are some real-world analogies. You have religious orders where people go to live in monasteries to train. In China, you have the Shaolin Temple, a legendary organization where children would leave their homes and join and train as warrior monks. So there are some similarities to the Jedi. Now, let's say that you are a child and you want to go and join the Jedi Order. Could you? If we look at the law, actually, the law doesn't look at it that way, in terms of, as a parent, could you prevent your child from going, which is probably the type of situation that would come up. What we have is that if you were a child, you wanted to leave your family, could you join this Jedi Order? What we're talking about essentially is what's known as emancipation of a minor. There are very limited circumstances in which a minor can be emancipated, which means that they can leave their home, leave their parents. They can get married if they have permission from their parents to support. They can join the military, again, if they get permission from the parents and the military accepts them. Or they can get a court order, and that requires them to be 14 years old. They don't want to live with their parents, and their parents are okay with that. They can handle their own money, and they have a way to make money. So in that case, emancipation could be good for you. Now, the closest similarities we have in real life are we don't have children with more sensitive abilities, again, that we know of, but we have children who have abilities where they can make money, famous children, child stars, music stars, movie stars, TV stars. That's the situation in which this would come up, and it has in fact come up over the years. We had, way back in the 80s, Tiffany sued for emancipation and lost. But there are situations where people sue for emancipation and won. So the legal system isn't quite ready to accept Jedi, but they are prepared to recognize limited situations where children could have some rights.
So let's talk about childhood endangerment. This is like a teenager and all of a sudden she's a general and ordering troopers to their deaths. Any issues with that?
So I guess the second step of being this Jedi and running off and joining the order, yes, you get to participate in these grand adventures, but some of these adventures are a little risky, a little dangerous. Under California law, you can be guilty of child endangerment if you willfully cause or permit the child to suffer injury, or if you willfully cause or permit the child to be placed in a situation where his or her personal health is endangered. That's California Penal Code, Section 273A. And what's interesting also is that the child doesn't actually have to be injured. If they are put at risk of injury, that's enough, and that's what the law is worried about. So let's take that legal standard and apply that to Star Wars. Jedi running around and doing all sorts of fun, but also crazy, risky items. As a child, the 8-year-old me is thinking, this is great, but now, if in my 40s and with my kids, I'm thinking, there's no way in heck I would be doing this stuff. So you have children running around with lightsabers. They're engaging in close quarters combat, often with people that want to hurt them. Get hurt. I think the Jedi Order, if they were based in real life, would probably have a slew of lawsuits against for child endangerment. So that could be a problem.
Well, and the other thing too is that children can't consent, right? So even if they wanted to be, if you're like me and you wanted to be a Jedi early on, the whole purpose of these laws is that children are too young to appreciate risks. So we hold adults accountable for putting children in situations where they can't be very serious.
And that's a good point. The way the law works with regard to personal responsibility is the younger you are, the more that responsibility is pushed on your parents. You have to get your parents' permission. The closer you get to 18, the law recognizes that you have more and more rights. So if you want to be a Jedi and your parents don't want you to, you want to wait till you're age of majority.
Judge Najera, let's talk about some space tyrants.
All right, let's do that. Specifically, let's talk about Hondo and Naka, because there are a lot of space tyrants in the Star Wars universe. But, it's interesting. Hondo started out life as almost a second-string villain. And yet he evolved into one of the most complex characters, I think, in the Star Wars universe. His story arc, I guess you'd call it, is almost the exact opposite of Anakin's. Anakin started out as a golden boy who just fell. And as fast as he fell is as fast as Hondo rose. Hondo started out as a despicable, evil villain. And over the course of the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, he managed to redeem himself to the point where Disney is now allowing him to host a ride. Go figure that. But there was a time when he was a very, very dark and despicable character. And that's the time that I want to discuss here. And specifically, I want to talk about the story arc involving the test of strength, bound for rescue, and a necessary bond, where Hondo and his team of pirates decided to basically board and rob a transport carrying a bunch of younglings. Okay, the plan was to steal the kyber crystals because they are priceless. So basically, Hondo orders his crew to attack the transport mid-flight. And in true pirate fashion, that is exactly what they do. They blow the hull and they board them. This is an act of air piracy. Under 49 U.S.C. 46502 and 18 U.S.C. 1651. These are federal offenses. And air piracy is described as seizing or exercising control of an aircraft by force, violence, or threat of force or violence. And that's exactly what he did. He used force to do that. And that alone is punishable by 20 years in federal prison. Now, people die in the course of what he did. And when you commit an act of air piracy and someone dies, that raises the punishment up to life imprisonment or death. So he's looking at this point at a couple of possible death sentences. But he doesn't stop there. That's how he starts. He starts this way. He then decides, well, he needs to find these younglings, and he thinks they're hiding in the air deck, so he has to smoke them out. Well, it sounds kind of interesting. We're going to smoke them out. We're going to send out the gas bombs. Well, in California, there's this crime called gassing. Penal Code 22810, and it is a felony. And every time he dropped one of those little bombs into an air shaft, even if there wasn't a child there, even if it was just an empty air shaft, each time that was a felony. And that added more years to his death penalty. Well, we're just going to go. It's like a law school test question. After the gassing, what does he do? Well, they actually do gas the kids out. So it is a successful gassing. And, of course, this is a robbery. This is all about getting those kyber crystals. They find the younglings, and Pietro turns over his kyber crystal. Now, granted, he does this as a ruse to try to escape, but it's still, he gave up that crystal as a result of force, fear, and it was taken from his immediate presence. And under Penal Code Section 211, that is a completed robbery. Now, that has a few years to it. But when you complete a robbery on a moving vessel, Guess what? That's a robbery in the first degree. So now we're up another 9 years out into all of the other charges Hondo's also looking at. Well, then we get to one of the most serious charges, and that's the question of did he intend to kill those younglings? And I propose to you, yes he did, and it's very clear in the statements that he made. He told his lieutenant, find the kids and bring them to me dead or alive. All that matters is that you find them and bring me their crystals. If anything, not anyone, but anything gets in the way, kill it. Now, attempted murder is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. And malice aforethought is expressed when there is manifested a deliberate intention to unlawfully take a life. And in this case, it's completely manifested expressly, so there isn't even any implication there. He's saying, find the kids and bring me the crystals, dead or alive. All that matters is that you find them and bring me their crystals. If anything gets in the way, kill it. So, at the point where his lieutenant acting on his orders, tells Pietro, hand over the crystal, and Pietro says, over my dead body, and the lieutenant says, that can be arranged. We've got a clear case of attempted murder, and since you think they're not going to let the Jedi know they stole these kyber crystals, they're going to kill all of those children. Well, you think after they're blown out of the hull, because I know when that happened, I'm breathing a sigh of relief thinking, this is over. Oh no. Unfortunately, when Padawan Tano got blown out with them, they decided to kidnap her. Now, kidnapping is bad enough, but there's a little exchange between Hondo and Ahsoka that's kind of disturbing. Because he tells her, well, I'm going to human traffic you. I am going to sell you to somebody. Now, first of all, human trafficking, right there, we're talking upwards of 12 years. But when you do it for a salacious purpose, and there are people under 18 in the audience, so we're not going to go into the details, but it was very clear between the lines that he was not selling her to be a nanny or a tutor to teach his kids how to be a Jedi. It was very clear by the way and his expressions that Hondo was going to sell her for some very salacious purposes. And when you talk about that kind of thing, that adds another 20 years. And understand, Padawan Tano was 14. Okay, it doesn't get any worse than that. So basically, you're talking about a truly despicable person who's planning to sell a 14-year-old into a kind of salacious slavery after committing a boatload of crimes that could be on any bar review course, and somehow goes from that to redeeming himself in a few years from this depraved human being to actually almost a hero. That is the magic of Star Wars.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Sure. It's almost like the writers went, ooh, this got dark. Let's back off. Gentlemen, let's talk about using unlawful weapons in war.
Sure, this is a really upbeat topic I got here.
We just went from human trafficking.
That's right. So, in this episode, which is in season 1, episode 14, Defenders of the Peace, General Luck Dirk, who was played by Mr. Sewell from Star Trek, okay? He wants to impress his boss, who's Count Dooku, as we all know, with his new weapon, the defoliator. What the defoliator would do is it would wipe out everything that's alive, and yet leave things like the droids and the separatists around. And so George Takei, playing Luck Dirk, says the following: "We tested a new weapon of my own design, which is capable of catastrophic destruction. A weapon that can destroy organic matter, but leave machines unharmed." And so and so he does plan to test this weapon on the harmless Lurmen. And the Lurmen are they're kind of like a cross between Ewoks and Manchichis. I think they only appeared in maybe just this episode, right? There was no Endor sequel with the Lurmen. So the question is that did this violate our conception of international law? And so let's go through that. So we have the Fourth Geneva Convention, which first defines protected persons. And if you've seen the episode, the first thing General Dirk says is that congratulations, you're under separatist control and protection. So yes, by that, Article 4 applies to learning. So the next question is that this plan, would it violate Article 32? Well, Article 32 says you can't do anything that will lead to the suffering or extermination of someone. Clearly that's the plan here, because he's hoping to get promoted. What better way to get promoted than to wipe out those Ewok things? And secondly, it also, Article 32 applies to medical or scientific experiments that really aren't necessary. It brings back what the Nazis did during World War II, the experimentation. So, General Dirk is, living up to some pretty high standards with his behavior in this episode. So, the answer to the question is yes. If we go to the next slide, there's no doubt that it violates the Geneva Convention in at least two ways. First, it would cause the extermination of those Manchiki things. And then second, it was a planned experiment. The whole purpose of this was to see if the weapon worked, because if it did, he would get promoted. So yes, it would violate the Geneva Convention. I would point out that basically everything in Star Wars violates the Geneva Convention. This topic was kind of like the middle square in bingo. It's kind of obvious what the answer would be. But yes, thinking like the Death Star, for example, would violate the Geneva Convention. Pretty clear. But yes, it would.
Well, let's talk about Rico and Darth Maul. Can you help us understand this criminal enterprise?
Absolutely. I gotta say, I love season 5. It's great for lawyers, and Survival Evidence and Shades of Reason should just be retitled How Not to Build a Criminal Enterprise by Darth Maul. So, Rico is a really fun statute. It is the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. It was designed to find people like the Godfather who are pulling the strings and who aren't really directly involved with any of the murders or other things that the enterprise is doing, but we still want to put them away for good time. That's what it's designed for. It's kind of exploded since then, not literally. But they, so the elements of RICO are you have to have a criminal enterprise, and it has to have a pattern of racketeering activity, and we're going to talk about what those things mean. So, an enterprise is basically any association of people that is defined not solely by the illegal acts committed. And so here we have Darth Maul and his brother/apprentice and all these people they're trying to hire from other people and everything like that. And I was trying to figure out how you could define them aside from the criminal acts. I mean, they're all big fans of money. They all hate Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we've got an I hate Obi-Wan Kenobi fan club there. That's the end of it, right? And by the way, if you are trying to not, get yourself complicit in RICO and all of these things, like, you don't say, we're going to be lords, crime lords. That looks terrible in Discovery. I'm just going to throw that that's our engineers. Okay, through a pattern, there has to be at least 2 acts of racketeering activity, and they have to be, have some trace of continuity through them. They have to be related to each other somehow. Which is really not a problem here, because Darth Maul and his brother basically, except for the time they're floating out in space doing nothing, are just continuously doing things that qualify as racketeering activity, which is a lot of things. Basically, most crimes qualify as racketeering activity. You've got embezzlement, you've got murder, you've got kidnapping, you've got robbery, you've got fraud, you've got, even as Disney, I'm sure, is thrilled to hear criminal copyright infringement. So, I would say that the RICO charges are not looking good for Maul on this one.
Awesome. So, Steve, let's talk about obeying orders and general Krell.
So, we know the gravity of this topic. So what we have is a 4-episode arc, one of the longer and really more powerful story arcs we see in the series to date, and we have more episodes coming down the pipe now. 1 year ago, it's going to be today. But in some, and I'm going to assume most people have seen the episodes, but the really quick recap, of course, is that the 501st is engaged in some combat missions. They receive a new commander Carol, who is noted for having a high success rate, but also a high casualty rate. Carol then begins ordering his men on some very dangerous missions to the point where it's really questionable why is he doing this, because the risk rate is just so high. And some of these soldiers begin to question orders, and it starts a debate. Some soldiers say, why are we doing this? And others say, no, we have to follow orders. We don't get to question why. Ultimately, some of these soldiers, in this climactic scene, Captain Rex, he senses something is wrong in the middle of a firefight. He runs out, stops the firefight, and he realizes that they are firing against their fellow clone soldiers. So at that point, it has become clear General Carol is a traitor, and he has set them up to fail because this has all been an audition for him to join the separatists. So the question then is, what happens when soldiers are ordered to do something horrible? Do they have any recourse? So what we have is, in the American military system, you can only disobey an order if it is unlawful. And the typical example that is cited would be the slaughter of civilians, the slaughter of innocents. One historical example is the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, in which over 500 civilians were killed, 14 men were ultimately charged, one was convicted.
And how many disobeyed the order?
Very few. There was the one famous helicopter pilot that landed to try to stop the fighting. He was actually ostracized, and he was seen as a traitor by his fellow soldiers at the time.
And only one guy on the ground threw down his weapon and said no.
So here you have in hindsight, it's easy for us to sit in judgment because we're not there, of course, but that is one of the more, as considered by the law, more black and white situations in which the order is illegal. It is now the soldier's duty really not to follow that. The American military system is one of the few that actually recognizes some individuality, that people have not just the right, but also the duty to at some point question orders. Now, a very interesting case study is the German military system. Now, we're looking at the system now rooted in history. When we look at the history of Germany, as we know, the country fought 2 world wars. There were numerous atrocities attributed to the German military. The German military started with a legal system which required absolute obedience, and it was believed that this is the only way to run an efficient military. And it can be argued that that was correct. They were very efficient. However, the downside is that you can also commit tremendous atrocities in that situation, because what you're doing is you're now removing the judgment of the individual and saying you have to follow orders no matter what. Well, what's fascinating is when you look at where we are now, under current German military law, a military order is not binding if it is not of any use or service or cannot be reasonably executed. And in fact, when German soldiers swear their oaths to Germany, the only requirement is that they can defend the motherland from attack. They cannot actually go out and conquer or attack other countries anymore, again, because of their history. And one of the most fascinating points here is that new German soldiers, they swear their oaths to defend Germany at the Bender Block, a Berlin building where participants of a failed attempt to assassinate Hitler were executed in 1944. Today, that building is a museum to German resistance. And every year, it's the place where new German soldiers are traditionally sworn to their duties. So what we have is a situation where new soldiers are sworn to military obedience, not in a place that symbolizes military obedience, but in a place that symbolizes military resistance. So they have gone completely 180. The pendulum has swung all the way to the other side, where they now recognize we have to impart this judgment upon the individual. We have to give them the right, the duty to question orders.
Now let's talk about Yoda here and dead people. Joshua, all right. Was Yoda involuntarily confined while hospitalized for a procedure he volunteered for?
Okay. Let's put some context to this. Yoda is clearly troubled. And he's been troubled ever since he heard that Sifo-Dyas, someone that he viewed as an enemy, was the individual behind the creation of the clones. And as he put it, our enemy created an army for us. And then Yoda did something very, very out of character, and out of character for the Jedis as well. He suggested that they enter into a conspiracy to hide things from the public. Basically, he wants, and they do, lie about the war and the war effort because they are afraid that if people knew the truth, they would lose faith in the war and there would be no support for it. He says we need to keep support for the war, so we're going to enter into this conspiracy to lie. Now, in recent history, and in fact, the history for the last 100 years, every time it's shown a government lies to their people about to keep support for an unpopular war, it never ends well. In this case, Yoda is starting to kind of, I don't want to say lose it, but he's very troubled by this. He's become a troubled soul. So he starts hearing voices of someone that he trusts. He starts hearing the voices of Qui-Gon Jinn. And he's thinking, okay, first he thinks maybe something's going on here. Maybe we're wrong about how we view the Force. Maybe you don't, when you die, don't leave the living Force. Maybe he's still there. But when none of the other Jedis can hear him, he's thinking, maybe I'm losing my mind. So he voluntarily commits himself. And he goes into the hospital and they start to try to determine if there's something wrong with him. Well, in the course of being hospitalized, he determines, well, you know what, maybe I'm going to listen to this voice. Maybe I'm going to follow it. At which point, Mace Windu and the Jedi Council decides that he isn't. And they turn this voluntary commitment into an involuntary commitment. Now, when this happens, Welfare and Institutions Code 5150 comes into play. And 5150 says that if an individual appears to be as a result of a mental health disorder, a danger to himself or others, or is gravely disabled, then he can be involuntarily committed. And after 72 hours, they can ask to re-up it. Well, let's look at the first element of that. Is he suffering from a mental disease? Possibly he's suffering from a delusional disorder, because he's basically thinking he's talking to dead people and that they're actually answering him. On the other hand, he's now hearing voices that are telling him to do something, and he's going to do that. That sounds like classic schizophrenia. But let's look at, there are two elements to that, because we don't just commit everyone who has a mental disease. There has to be evidence that he's been a danger to himself, a danger to others, or that he's somehow gravely disabled. And he has exhibited none of those characteristics. In fact, quite the opposite. He's been behaving extremely responsibly. And during the 72 hours that they've been holding him, he hasn't exhibited any of those behaviors. Now, under Welfare and Institutions Code 5170.7, he can request to be released and go off to follow Qui-Gon Jinn, and they can't stop it. But because no one has shown that he's been a danger to himself or others. They're not doing that. At which point, when those guards were ordered to guard that door, Yoda has now become the victim of false imprisonment by the Jedi Council. They can be prosecuted for that.
So, let's talk about impersonation of a cadet. And I'm going to ask everyone, we got 10 minutes, let's rock and roll.
All right, so in this episode, Death Trap Season 2, Boba Fett impersonates a clone cadet called Lucky, so he can go on this cadet tour of a Star Destroyer and get revenge on Mace Windu. Remember, Mace Windu cut off his dad's head, so he had a pretty good reason to want to get revenge. He does not end up killing Mace Windu, but he does end up destroying the Star Destroyer as well as killing many clones on the ship. Quick footnote. You know, whenever something like this happens, there's going to be risk management's going to get called. Things are going to happen. You know, it's too bad, but they did cancel the, bring a cadet clone to work day. It's unfortunate. But please look, that's going to happen when something like this happens. It's at least you can expect. So anyway, so back to the story. So the crimes. Sure, he can be charged with attempted murder of Mace Windu, destruction of the clones and the Star Destroyer. What about just impersonating a cadet? Interesting question. So there's a Supreme Court case, U.S. versus Alvarez, which had to do with the Stolen Valor Act. That was where a guy was wearing these medals saying, I won these medals, I was a great war hero, and he wasn't. That was a felony. The Supreme Court said no. The First Amendment protects that. So is what he's doing like that? We still on the books have many laws saying you can't impersonate a police officer. Please don't come out of this thinking you can. There's a line between conduct and speech, but Alvarez did make that somewhat of a fuzzier area. I think the easiest crime to charge him with here is espionage. He's impersonating someone to do these bad things, and that's why that's up there. I was not a fan of Last Jedi, I'll be clear about that. This movie I would watch with Boba Fett and Carol Najera. I would definitely watch that one. So I think espionage would be the way to go in this case.
Excellent. Well, let's pivot to murder for hire. And Bethany, can you help us follow up on trying to kill this one?
Yes, we can do this very quick. Don't hire people to murder people, and if you do, especially don't think about it while crossing state lines.
Awesome. Judge Nahara, let's talk about defending Tuck and anyone who followed Order 66.
Okay, we're gonna breeze through this. There's a thing in the law called mens rea, and it goes back to the very beginning of I think it was the Rosetta Stone and the law of Hammurabi, and basically what the Latin is actus non factum reum nisi mens sit rea, which translates to there can be no crime, large or small, without an evil mind. And we have that in California Penal Code today, Penal Code 20, as basically in every crime or public offense, there must be a joint operation or of act and intent or criminal negligence. Now, in this case, there's two schools of thought as to what caused the clones to behave the way they did and kill all the Jedi. In the Clone Wars, they discussed that the clones were DNA encoded so that if any of the Jedis went rogue, there would be a way to stop the rogue Jedi. And what happened in the case of Tuck was that his chip deteriorated. And when it deteriorated, it stopped inhibiting that particular genetic encoding, and as a result, he killed General Tiglar, General Tip. On the other hand, if you watch Revenge of the Sith, you see the Emperor saying, I am now decided to do one of the clone troopers, and he issues the command to execute Order 66. It implies that somehow the chip is organic and is giving that order to them, making them do it. Bottom line is, in either case, whatever it is, they are being ordered to do it. Therefore, there is no mens rea, so they have an absolute defense against any charges for their behavior.
Well, let's talk about malfunction chips.
Okay, let's talk about these. Bottom line is, when Psycho Diaz contracted Kaminoans to clone Jango Fett, he also basically didn't conspire with them, but he basically sold them this bill of goods that if any of the Jedi go rogue, we must have this organic chip in them so that we can force them to basically take out the rogue Jedi. Now, in the law, we have this theory or this legal doctrine called consumer products liability. And it's triggered when an arguably dangerous product is defective or causes injury. When that happens, the manufacturer or seller is liable for the inherently dangerous product. And in some cases, he's liable under a theory of strict liability, and in other cases, he's liable under a theory of negligence. Now, my conclusion is that in this case, the Kaminoans are in fact liable under a theory of strict liability. Strict liability is the legal doctrine that holds that a manufacturer is responsible. If you manufacture something that is inherently dangerous, like an explosive, or C4, or a killing machine, like a clone, then even if you're not negligent in the way you do it, and something goes wrong, you're liable. That's strict liability. On the other hand, so it would seem that Tbilisi would have an absolute slam dunk case. However, let's think about this. What are the damages? In this case, those chips were designed to do exactly what they did to General Tip. General Tiglar. They were designed to kill Jedi. They worked perfectly. The only issue is they worked a year or two earlier than they were supposed to. So what are the damages for her dying a year before she should have? And that's the problem with what seems like a cut-dry theory can sometimes be not quite as simple as it seems.
Okay, we have 4 minutes for 3 topics.
So basically, speaking of product liability, these are all these situations were in the previous seasons of the Clone Wars, but how many people were at Celebration in the spring? So yeah, we saw the clip of Ahsoka at the Clone Wars panel, just like plucky and German like Ahsoka, and then she like drives over a bottomless pit because Star Wars, and the console kind of crackles and her thruster goes out. She's plunged into peril, and this is another classic example of products liability, automotive products liability. If we were to represent Ahsoka, we need to know a little bit more about why her scooter malfunctioned, but if it was because of a manufacturing defect, like something that happened at the manufacturer or the retailer, she could recover money damages for that. But if it was a defective design, like this type of scooter was not able to do that kind of maneuver over a bottomless pit, then this is like that type of case like the Ford Pinto or the GM ignition switches or the Takata airbags. Huge liability exposure, huge recalls. Ahsoka is going to vindicate the rights of consumers galaxy-wide. It's a Star Wars story.
And get rich.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
let's talk about the trial of Ahsoka. Bethany.
All right. So we had a lot of this. We're just going to hit the greatest hits, right? Okay. Lots of things wrong with this trial. One, you are generally entitled to a jury of your peers. She is tried by the Senate, which is a political body, which is not the people you want on your jury. Also, they are asking for the death penalty. It's unclear how old Ahsoka is at this time, but she's probably still in like the teenage years, right? You cannot have the death penalty for anybody under the age of 18 under U.S. law.
What about taxes?
Last time, our Texas is still part of the U.S.
So, we have lots of applicants with Karkin playing witness while doing his direct examination, and Palpatine and Judge is also bad because he says, like, yeah, we've been fooled before. Judges aren't supposed to do that. So let's talk about what do you do when you suspect the chief executive is colluding with a hostile power in the science fiction fantasy. And one thing you want to do is you want to show the conspiracy, show the collusion, show what were the travel arrangements like for Palpatine? Did he go to Mandalore while Darth Maul was there? What about all the communications records with Count Dooku? That's a little weird. They're the bad guys. But whatever you should not do under any circumstances is send all the Jedi in to arrest him, because that looks like a military coup. You need to have the Judiciary Committee open an impeachment proceeding, look at all the evidence, vote, send it to the full House of Representatives. No one else in the world knows about this except for the other authors and I. This is the public debut of the book that I helped write. Oh, tomorrow night we have Lawyers on Godzilla. Now available on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and Apple iBooks is Unlocked Stories. 10 stories about one phone. So, mine is about an app that allows you to send text messages to dead people. Mine is the uplifting story. So, check that out. Brand new. You were the first people to know about it. And thank you all.